Rebels, welcome to the Rebels Edge. I'm live with my man Pete. We're going to talk about some live UOA today. Stick around.
Welcome to the Rebels Edge. I got my man Justin Nugent over there across the bay and across the ocean, actually. He's all the way over there in Hawaii. So we're catching him at an early hour. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing amazing, Pete. Doing amazing, especially now that the market is really doing its thing.
Yeah, it's been great to see, and we're going to cover a lot of that and the reasons why the market all of a sudden took a big move to the upside. So that ought to be pretty fun. But before we do that, just tell me a little bit about what's going on over there in Hawaii, man. You guys got some nice waves, or is it calm right now?
Well, if I had time to be out at the beach, I would give you the whole scoop. In truth, it's a little foggy out right now, actually, but it's always really nice out here, and
Yeah.
viewers who watch Pete know that he's out here a pretty decent amount of time, and he knows that it's beautiful here.
My favorite place in the world. All right, let's get a little macro going on here. So the Trump meetings actually did produce, and that's what's really moving those markets. The markets are absolutely ripping to the upside. I think from a macro perspective, that's as macro as it gets. And the fact that he had the UK by phone and they were going through this whole process, and I really think that they handled this very, very well. Clearly, the market did as well, because the market jumped almost immediately as we were getting through a lot of the commentary and everything else and the closing of it all. And I'll tell you what, it was an amazing meeting just to hear that there's not just about the UK. He's talking about all kinds of different things over in Europe and everything else. So did he bite off too much? I think the answer still is yes, but he's starting to make some moves. So we're starting to see some good things happen in the market rather than this drain that we were seeing for a while.
Yeah, market's pumping, Bitcoin's pumping. And you know what I really thought was interesting about the deal is that the headline that said the UK is going to buy a 10 billion purchase of Boeing planes later today. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, how else are they going to start co-opting these deals into ways that start to maybe buff some of the stocks and businesses that had kind of taken it on the chin leading up into this point? But I just mentioned Bitcoin. That's part of the future segment. I want you to be able to go first with that. So I won't say anything.
Well, you know where I'm going. First, I'll just say this about oil, though. Oil has been absolutely incredible. If you go to the start of April and we were at 71, and then we got all the way down not too long ago, just days ago at 58, and here we are at 58, 59 bucks. Absolutely an amazing move. But it's still all about volatility for me. And I talked about this yesterday with John. We were kicking around volatility and the fact that, we started off, the beginning of April, 22 on the VIX. We spiked up to 60. We pulled back to 22. Then we've been in this kind of no man's land. That really is what we call it when we're somewhere about, call it between 24 and 26. And that's kind of where we found ourselves. Well, we're starting to see a little bit of the press down on that as well. And so if we get down there at 22, and as I said yesterday, we get through 22 and we get down towards 20, we ain't that far away from 17, my man. And that's kind of an amazingly fast trip when you really look at it.
Yeah, the trips just keep getting faster and faster with more volume. As we go down, it feels like we go down faster. As we go up, it feels like we go up faster. But you called this too. The last time that we were on, you said, well, if earnings are all right, probably end up on the other side, the downside of 25. That's exactly what happened, right? I'll make mine Bitcoin. We're back over 100K. Similar, very fast move. We were just at 76 not that long ago. Probably looking for all-time highs pretty soon in Bitcoin. But that's why it's safe.
I think that one's really interesting because you know what? I don't watch Bitcoin as closely probably as a lot of other people do, but I keep an eye on it, of course. But the fact that I saw it going over 100,000, I was like, wow, now we're starting to move a little bit because it was stuck underneath that for a while. And maybe, just maybe it can hold on. All right, we got 4 stocks like we do every single day. Compass Minerals is the first one that we're going to hit. This one's pretty interesting to me. We had some UOA, but I'm going to let you get to that when you get the opportunity. Essential Minerals is what they do. How about this? They come in and they report their earnings at 63 cents. They were looking for 39. They reported 63. Not so bad. You take a look also over at their revenue. Absolutely crushed it. 494 million. They were a year ago was 364. That's up 36% year over year. That tells me a lot about how much people are starting to gravitate towards this whole thing. Got a PE of 23. The stock is up, what, 17% today or something like that. And you got a short interest of 5 or 7. I think there's a little bit of a squeeze going on right now as well. But tell us a little bit about the UOA and what you're seeing in there.
Yeah, I mean, first, just the EPS beat, just like you said, 63 to 39. That is so great. And also, yeah, when you see UOA, and it's the first time on the log, or it's really rare to see it on the log, it always really piques my interest when you're coming up into an earnings and not everybody is already looking at it. You know, it's a little harder to catch a really great earnings trade in a very, very large stock. Not to say that it doesn't happen, but you get really big moves out of some of these. That's what happened here. They're up 83.81% over the past month. And when I looked this morning, up 21% today, around 17.29. We were seeing some UOA on the 9th of April, all the way out in December, 7,000 of the December 15 strike calls. Those were asking for a lot. They were really cheap. And now we're pretty deep in the money on those. And there's still a whole lot of time. So you gotta love it.
It's why we love the options world, right, brother?
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of options, we definitely have some UOA in the next one too.
Yeah, we're going to hit Nvidia. And this one's pretty interesting because, Nvidia, anybody who's followed it, it kind of has just sort of stopped, right? It hasn't been the go-to stock that everybody talks about. Matter of fact, everybody stopped talking about Nvidia for a while here now. It got underneath 100. It's kind of been wavering around. It's made some moves, but pulled back. Maybe they finally have the opportunity to make a move that they can sustain. I think a lot of that will be related to the fact of the chip export rules or curbs or whatever you want to call them for those global AI chip exports. So that's something that the president has been doing and working pretty aggressively. We've seen that happening. By the way, when you look at what Nvidia has become now, it's got a 26 PE. I remember when its PE, price to earnings, was in the 70s. Free cash flow of $44 billion. Cash to debt, $33 billion. They have a lot going on, and one of the things they got going on is somebody out there was buying some calls. Isn't that right, man?
That's exactly true. A couple times. So we're long a couple different options in 3 at 3 Pro. And one of them, John had actually picked out yesterday. We released it at 3 just moments before this announcement ended up happening. I was like, wow, that's really well timed, isn't it? That tends to be what happens to UOA. But one thing that I think is just really cool is that this is why I'm so proud to be a part of this type of organization and not like a traditional finance type thing. Because if you were watching a certain 4-letter network during the moment where this news was released, you would have heard, God, a 30-minute interview going on 10 hours is what it felt like, with a fund manager whose name I won't say, but it was Jeffrey Gundlach, talking about bonds and why, long rates might go higher and the economy's weaker and all the things he's been saying since dinosaurs walked the earth. And in the meantime, if you were just in 3 at 3 UOA, even if you had a little scanner, you could have caught this really crazy fast-paced move in Nvidia and all the semis. And yeah, you would have been early. It's traditional finance is not meant for traders, but places like this are, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yep, appreciate that, man. Well, next up is Tapestry. Luxury clothes and all the different items that comes with that or whatever. You would think that they would be struggling right now, right? Everything we hear in the markets, especially those ridiculous surveys that they go out and they check 1,000 people and they go, hey, what do you think about the economy and all the rest of that? It is such a ridiculous thing that they do, because I'd rather see what do they do with their money. I really don't care what people say. I want to see what they do with their money, right? And I think that the reality is people are actually still going out. They're still doing this. I mean, I go to restaurants, whether I was in Florida or back up here in Minnesota, they are packed. So, you don't hear that, though. You always hear all the negative. You don't hear any of the positive. So I look at Tapestry and I go, okay, let's see. How'd they do? Well, their revenue is up by about 7% year over year. They beat on their earnings in a pretty big way, 95 cents over 88 cents. And then I look over and they go, well, we're going to raise our guidance on top of everything else, both for the revenue and for the earnings. So cash flow margins, they're up 5%. It seems to me like somebody really has screwed up because of the fact that they were expecting these things to all getting beat up. And the reality is this whole earnings season has buoyed the markets on the negative side. There's been a pull, right? But with these earnings, we've gotten that pulled back, and they've been leading this sort of run that we've had. Absolutely an amazing one. And I think Tapestry today says a lot about what those surveys really mean.
Yeah, which is that the surveys are super biased and they use a really, really, really small sample size for a huge number of people. And numbers like this really show us so much. You're exactly right. Like Coach and Kate Spade, those are two of the brands that Tapestry owns. These are designer brands, but these are not, Burberry. These are not you have to be a celebrity or someone very, very rich to even want to get it. These are things that people can buy. It's just an expensive purchase for them. And it shows us that, it's not just these like very, very rich 1%ers that are doing well in this economy. It's kind of just middle class, normal people who are at least doing well enough to be buying Coach and Kate Spade stuff. At least well enough that not only did Tapestry do well this quarter, but exactly as you said, they increased their guidance. We did have UOA in this one as well. I'm sounding like a broken record. They bought this 4 times for between May 9th and May 16th expiration. They bought them between April 14th and May 1st with the stock at 65, 64, 68, 71, all those calls are now well in the money. Last I looked, definitely still in the money. And that's what we really, really like to see. We like to see, can we trade this piece of news? And that's the question that I get to ask Pete about in our next stock.
So PATH, or UiPATH, this one's pretty interesting. It's about robotics, right? And the whole automation of everything that goes on there. What people have lost sight of, and this is something that actually I think Nvidia was one of the folks that was really on the cutting edge and in front of all of this, but talking about the expansion into robotics. And we've heard more and more about this, but global robotics is not slowing down. It's still going to be something that's going to expand. It's going to do it in a big way. And I look at this company, and I like to look at the fundamentals of a lot of companies if I'm not totally familiar with them. So I looked at this one and I'm like, okay, the cash to debt is 1.6 billion. That seems like it's a pretty good number. The free cash flow is about 450 million. Again, seems like a pretty damn good number. They do have some decent short interest, and I view that as a positive, because if I'm a trader, stock or specifically in the option side of it, that's where the squeeze starts to come into play. The folks that have been riding something, and then all of a sudden you start to get that squeeze. And I think 6 or 8%, that used to be considered big, but there's been much bigger than that over time. But still, 6 or 8%, sometimes those folks are going to panic. And if they do, that gives you that squeeze. It gives you that extra push to the upside. It's a company that's trading, it's a robotics company, and they're trading at 21 PE. So is it still pretty cheap? I'd say yes. Strong earnings growth? Yes, they've got that. I like a lot of things about this company. I know a lot of people are negative. I am not. I'm very, very positive on this name.
Yeah, me too. This is one of those ones that has treated us really, really nice. And you're right, it's super cheap right now. This was trading at 80 back during the kind of buy everything moment of 2021. But yeah, now it's at 1240. The last time that we saw this in UOA, and actually the last several times, they're always coming in here like a day before the expiration, and they're buying these very, very cheap 1-digit options, something like 5 cents, 3 cents is what they're trying to spend a lot of the time. And they're not even that far out of the money. These are just pretty cheap options. And so the question I pose to you, Pete, what do you think of the UOA that we're seeing here? And in case you didn't see it, they came in stocks at 1230, and they picked up tomorrow's expiring 1250 strike calls for, I think, 6 cents, between maybe 6 and 8 cents or something like that.
It's a great opportunity. And you know what? You're not going to lose a whole heck of a lot. Obviously, 6 cents for an option. You're not going to lose a whole heck of a lot, but it gives you the opportunity if it gives you enough of a push. Now, it is getting close. We're talking about tomorrow is when these expire. So that's something that you always have to keep in mind. You have to understand the whole thing. And that's why we've got a big, huge group of guys who do a great job tutoring people, helping them out, and teaching them how to trade options and understanding what's going on within the options world. So I like it. I think it's very, very short term. So people have to understand what that truly means. I mean, you've got today and tomorrow, and that's it. So it makes it interesting. They're very inexpensive opportunity there. And as we talk about volatility all the time, the volatility that we talk about is the VIX. That's the S&P 500. We're talking about implied volatilities when you talk about a specific stock. And you can see those just get really crushed down, which sometimes does create a little bit more opportunity. So I like to see it. I think we're pretty close to the expiration of those, though. So if you're new at all to this world of options, you might want to understand a whole lot more than maybe if you don't understand a lot, you might want to understand a little bit more. But at least watch it, right? You can always watch it and see, how does this thing move? What did it look like? Did it actually get close? Did it happen? Whatever. So I like it, man. I think it's great. All right, are we ready for a little bit of sports?
We're ready for sports. Take us to sports.
I love it, man, because you really are more into sports and you talk about it more than I think a lot of people think. I mean, you've been on here multiple times, so they've gotten to know who Justin is. And great guy, does a lot of things, keeps himself in great shape. So, that's all part of the whole thing, too. So the first thing I want to bring up is this. The NFL. The NFL is always got something. There's always news there. So I decided to look around and say, all right, we've gone through free agency. We've gone through the draft. And now what? So I'm looking and I'm thinking, what team right now looks like they have a great team except just one item is missing, a quarterback. And I'm looking around. Now you've got some really young quarterbacks coming into they got drafted really high and all the rest of that. I'm not really talking about that. They will start most likely, but I'm talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. And what do I mean by that? Well, Mason Rudolph, anybody? Do you know even where he went to school or anything? Probably not. I do, because I'm a football nerd, Oklahoma State kid. But then there's Will Howard. They drafted him this year, right? Will Howard coming to Ohio State. Great quarterback, did a great job in college, but he's not exactly an elite quarterback, or at least that was the judgment of most, because he didn't get drafted till the 6th round. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. When you look at this team, though, Justin, they've got two great receivers. They got DK Metcalf. They picked him up from the Seattle Seahawks. He is unbelievable. He is an absolute freak show athlete, unreal to watch. Robert Woods is also great. They got two great tight ends. This kid, Darnold Washington, hasn't really performed yet, but sometime he will. He is big as a house out of Georgia. I love the kid. I watched him all through college. Now, the defense is one of the top defenses in all the NFL. Across almost all the numbers you want to look at, they're somewhere in that group of top 8, top 5, whatever, but they have a great defense. Why don't they have a quarterback? Well, they've been courting Aaron Rodgers for a long time. I'm starting to think more and more. I thought maybe he was just going to walk away, but I think Aaron Rodgers fits perfectly to Pittsburgh as long as he doesn't go crazy and drive the head coach crazy, which he won't, because that head coach will not put up with it. But it's just interesting to me to see a team that's got every piece to the puzzle except for the biggest piece, the most important piece, which is a quarterback. You almost have to have a quarterback if you really want to be competitive and get to the next level. So I'm going to say this. Aaron Rodgers will sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
That's a super bold prediction. Yeah, they have everything except the guy who touches the ball every play, right? So almost every piece. Pete, I want to ask you this, and it's okay if you don't want to answer. Do you ever do any like DraftKings on these types of predictions? Any type of sports bet at all on these types of things? It feels like you have a great
question.
read.
You know what? I am not a monster bettor, but every once in a while, and John's gotten into that more and more, especially with the sports thing, is maybe picking out something that seems like it's almost too obvious not to do it or whatever. But no, I haven't done that yet, but I have a lot of friends who really enjoy gambling and all that kind of stuff. So I just let them, I live vicariously through them. All right, next up, we got the NBA. Now, the NBA has gotten to be pretty interesting this year. The Boston Celtics is one of the best teams the entire year. They are now down 2-0 in their series with the Knicks, who actually have played really well all year. But when you look at it, obviously the Celtics were a huge favorite. Well, they're down 2 games right now. That's looking pretty ugly. We got another one. The team with the very best record the entire year is the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, they had the best record. They were in the East, and they're down 2-0. And they're down to the Pacers, the Indiana Pacers. So that's kind of interesting. OKC, so right now they're at a 1-1 game. They are absolutely unbelievable. As a matter of fact, they put up 149 points last night, which other than when they're doing their pro basketball, elite going against each other, there's nobody gets up to 149 points. This team is unbelievable. And a friend of mine has a son who's one of the starting players on there. And I'll tell you what, it's a fun team to watch. I've had an opportunity to go to some games. OKC is pretty cool. The Minnesota Timberwolves play tonight. Will they beat Golden State? So this is one you and I could talk about. We don't know what the line is right now. I think it's pretty high actually for the Timberwolves to win. But I guess I would say this: without Steph Curry and losing game one where nobody could shoot the basketball certainly was not a good thing for the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's at the Minnesota Timberwolves Target Center again tonight. I see you kind of poking around. I'm guessing you're looking to see what the spread is.
Yep. I was looking at it. Yeah, and for what it's worth, I'm not a sports bettor either, but I always thought it would be funny if at the end of this sometimes we're like, okay, here are all the options plays. Now this is just for fun. Yep. Here's the sports bettor.
Yeah, we can do that, man.
But yeah, no, for what it's worth, yeah, it's plus 375 the Warriors, minus 500 the Timberwolves. I just wanted to say, for the Celtics, number one, they're my home team. Grew up in Maine, back then, and first basketball game that I ever went to. And so it's extra painful to see them blow back-to-back double-digit leads at home. First team in the play-by-play era to cough up multiple 20-point leads in a single postseason, and they did it in consecutive games.
That's amazing.
That is rough.
That's amazing.
And history is really not on their side either. Teams, this is a fun stat, teams that start down 0-2 have only come back 7.3% of the time since 1956. So
that is not much. That doesn't give a lot of hope, does it? Wow, that looks ugly. Well,
no, it does not.
We'll see if they break some of those kinds of things. I'll tell you what, the one thing I did notice, because the Timberwolves are my team, I had season tickets since the day they got to Minnesota or started their franchise in Minnesota. Ant couldn't shoot. That was a big problem for him. DiVengio, this other kid that we got from the Knicks in a trade, was 1 for 7 from threes. We just weren't shooting. And you know what? You've got to get the ball in the basket or you're going to have a problem. And so that's what really was the problem for the Timberwolves. I don't think it will be a problem again. I think that's going to change tonight. So we'll see how it goes. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you stepping in, especially last minute. John literally like, hey, what do you think? And I'm like, well, I think if you're on a plane, it's not going to go so well. So it's great to have you, Justin. Great time, man. Always good. We do not do this show on Friday, so we will see you Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Giddy up.
See ya.